Jacob Pinnell, and this is Faithful Fatherhood. Today, we're going to be discussing two books called The TechWise Family and My TechWise Life. Both of those books are written by Andy Crouch, and that's The TechWise Family, and Amy Crouch, his daughter, My TechWise Life. So we have this unique view into how both to design a TechWise life and what the actual results are and the experience of it for our children. So we can learn and discern how to do that. This is one of my favorite ways to bring you some great information and wisdom as fathers. I think a lot of times we fall into the trap of too many rules or too many this, or I should do this or that, rather than actually taking the time to sit down and discern. Now, we don't all have time to read two books on just one take for TechWise formula. So you're getting a synthesis of ideas here, just like you got last week with the American Academy of Pediatrics 5 C's. So what these books are is not the technology is destroying our children. Both of them are too thoughtful for that. Rather, Andy Crouch opens up the TechWise family by saying that figuring out the proper place for technology in our particular family and stage of life requires discernment rather than a simple formula. That word, discernment, sets the tone for everything that follows. Now, I imagine we all have some sort of screen time habits, and we probably are worse than we wish we were. I'm certainly right in that boat with you, but they're not a habit problem. They're a formation problem. And that's really the central thesis of Andy Crouch's The TechWise Family book. Screens are not neutral tools we simply use. They are active environments, quietly shaping the kind of fathers and men we are becoming. If you picture like an iceberg, the 10% above the water is the tech habits and screen time limits. The 90% beneath is the spiritual and character formation going on. What if screens are quietly shaping who I am? And that requires discernment rather than that simple formula. The way Andy Crouch kind of places his thesis is in the context of a family. And so his kind of central take on that is the family exists to form persons. These traits of forming persons don't come from passive consumption. They grow from doing hard things and being known by people who tell you the truth. So he kind of has two pillars to this purpose of the family. One of them, courage. That's the will to act on wisdom and even at a cost. So what is wisdom? Wisdom is not simply just knowledge. Knowledge is mastering information about particular aspects of the world. Rather, wisdom is understanding that guides action. It's knowing what the right thing to do is in a tremendously complex world. So, to start off this whole thing, are you forming your children for comfort or for courage? Because technology is all too happy to form them for comfort. So one of technology's kind of false promises asserted by Andy Crouch is the idea of easy everywhere. One of the quotes that always sticks with me is that anything that offers easy everywhere does nothing. Well, almost nothing to actually form human capacities. That's directly from the book. If you think about it like a bridge, maybe, you start with a desire and then tech offers a bypass straight to passive consumption rather than actually forming and creating deeper, more meaningful human capacity, because we're going to have that desire and then there's going to be friction and then there's going to be struggle. And then through that friction and struggle, you're going to acquire some skills. And then by acquiring that skills through more friction and struggle, you're going to actually gain wisdom and courage, which Crouch helps clarify as an idea of character. That sentence, anything that offers easy anywhere does almost nothing to actually form human capacities. It stopped me cold. I think about what kind of think about what we hand our kids and ourselves every single day? Is it that easy bridge from desire to passive consumption, or is it friction, struggle, skills, and character? A lot of us receive this training in a posture of distraction. The danger isn't an individual moment of distraction. It's in the cumulative weight of 1,000 small capitulations that train the body and mind to always be half elsewhere, scanning for something more interesting. Those one-time distractions feed into a funnel only to drip out what's actually happening, i.e., scrolling on the bus or checking email at dinner. When we change from a posture of distraction, we're changing into a posture of perseverance. The posture of distraction makes it really hard to do the slow, unglamorous work that anything worth having actually requires. That's the posture of perseverance. So the next thing that Andy Crouch is going to bring to us is the idea of a family structure. So these three things are going to be happening either deliberately or by default. It's how you structure your time, your space, and your character. So time, rhythms of work and rest and or Sabbath, shaping your space, intentional choices about the physical environment you're around, and character, making wisdom and courage, not comfort, your kind of goals. We make these choices deliberately or by default, and reclaiming our home from technology means maybe rebuilding this architecture. Structuring time landed the hardest for me. How do rhythms actually function in our house? It's something that I've been really intentional about over the years, and it's something that keeps coming up again and again in my writing. One of my greatest fears about my older son starting a competitive sports team was what this was going to do to our family time and how it was all structured. And that's because a lot of times when we aren't intentional about our time, we can fall into the toil and leisure trap. So, toil is this frantic kind of work that's not really work because it's drained of meaning. But because we're so frantic and we're drained, that means we're exhausted, which oftentimes leads us into leisure or a passive consumption or an addiction architecture. It's effortless pleasure without the cost. Compare this with actual work, the meaningful stuff that we actually love and are fulfilled by. It requires real skill and courage. That leads us into rest, which is a little bit restorative, but it's also rooted in connection. So Albert Boardman has this great quote on here. What happens to families when the home becomes a leisure zone? Well, children never see their parents acting with wisdom and courage in the world of work. I know that this is something that I recognized very early on, thanks to Andy Crouch. And it's one of the reasons why I continue to work at putting out articles. It's so my kids can see me actually doing something and taking the risk of growing. Video is something new to me overall, and I may not be great at it, but I am growing in it. I'm willing to risk putting myself out there just to keep growing. Fathers, like this one is for us. What does my work look like to my children? Or do they mostly see me staring at a rectangle? Am I actually doing something? Our kids practice our work with us a lot of times. It's really cool to see if it's actual meaningful work. It's also a little frightening to have that mirror held up to you. But I want you to think about when you're doing this work, what the posture is. Are you in a posture of distraction or are you in a posture of perseverance? So that posture of distraction is those little moments over and over and over again. This is not a falling off a cliff. It's a slow fade. And the posture of distraction is we continually choose those distractions rather than actually engaging with the world around us. And we can realize this when we realize that technology is not neutral. Every app on your phone has a thesis about who you are and how you want to live. Do you want your children formed by a world that fundamentally believes they need saving from boredom and loneliness, and that a screen is the answer? Because those are some of the key things that tech assumes about you. First, you're bored. That's like the endless games and content to fill every spare second. Second, that you're lonely. That's and the response it's giving is this virtual intimacy and out validation as a substitute for the real thing. Those are when we go for those likes that everyone seems to crave on Facebook. And the third one is that you need saving. And the device, it's going to position itself as the savior, as the answer to your loneliness and boredom. Contrast that with what the TechWise family cultivates: patient wonder. That's looking closely to uncover the breathtaking splendor of the real world, real relationship. That's a risky proposition of being fully known in person. I think a lot of times as dads, we fall into the trap of knowing our kids, but not being known by our kids. Now, of course, our kids have to age up for us to get there. But if we don't lay those foundations early on, we're setting ourselves up for failure in the long run, because the last thing that it's going to cultivate is mutual dependence or relying on each other to grow in wisdom and courage. And I don't mean some kind of traumatic interdependence or something like that, but I mean the dependence that's natural and good and comes from being a family. After all, isn't that the goal of faithful fatherhood? To be in a family? The reality is that when we're bored, tech is compressing the world into flat takes. When we're lonely, it's substituting real connection. And when we're in need of saving, it's numbing our exhaustion. So what assumptions does each piece of tech bring with it? The news app thinks I'm anxious and hungry to be upset. Is that actually what I should be using the news app for? Because that's its goal, to keep me scrolling through it, anxious and upset. One of the cool things that Amy starts to bring, and that's where we're going to kind of round out this discussion, is this idea of privacy. So privacy, by Amy's take, is good, but secrets are not. Privacy is about growing up and actually taking responsibility for your behavior. Secrets happen when we go underground with the parts of ourselves that we are most ashamed of. The internet makes it breathtakingly easy to build a life of secrets, to become someone ultimately that's anonymous or without a name, by presenting a curated self that is actually entirely cut off from the possibility of real love because you're not really known. Now, as a Christian, I believe in the God of the universe that knows my name. Now, by that means that I get the opportunity to take responsibility that's ultimately going to lead to my maturation. That's going to be to my benefit, versus being anonymous, where I hide in shame in the dark. That's ultimately going to lead to isolation. Which would you choose? Maturation or isolation? One of those leads to the good things in life. The other one is part of the scariest parts of human existence. So, one of the beautiful takes alongside their Christian life and ethic of the Crouches is this idea of Sabbath. Sabbath is merely about recovering from exhaustion. It's actually still governed by the logic of toil. So if you'll remember, we talked about that toil versus work earlier. A true Sabbath is actually a celebration of creation. Now, this has immediate implications for our screens. When the phone is the first thing we reach for in the morning, we kill the spark of an almost forgotten dream or a quiet prayer. The screen rushes us past the joy of actually just waking up. And trust me, I've got my aches and pains. The joy of waking up is not quite as joyful as it used to be. Um, but look at your kids. How much joy do they have when they wake up? Do they not come rushing in to get you up out of bed, to greet you with the day? I want you to shift your mindset from a recovery Sabbath to a celebratory Sabbath. A recovery Sabbath is just a pause button on Toil. And it's primarily used to recover from exhaustion. We all get there. It's okay. Sometimes recovery is the best thing you can do. But oftentimes it's still organized around your labor. So ask yourself, is my Sabbath actually organized around my labor, or is it organized around love? Because when it's organized around love, a day bent towards you, it becomes a day bent towards the people you love. And you set aside it to properly celebrate life. And isn't that a joy? What a gift to organize a day around love. One of the things that Amy Crouch noticed is this idea of what the cure for boredom is. And for her, the answer was wonder, not distraction. So handing a child a device every time they're bored actually trains them out of wonder. Boredom is a signal that we aren't actually looking hard enough at a world full of breathtaking splendor. So don't go for the flat, quick takes and no wonder. Rather, follow the mystery. Zoom in or maybe zoom out. Don't focus in on the small screen or maybe the really big screen. Look at the trees. Look at the leaves. Look at the ants. Look wider and narrower at the same time. Get your attention following something that is created. Notice your children and how they look, how they laugh, how they cry. These are some of the most beautiful things we can actually ever see in our entire life. And I don't want you to miss it like I sometimes miss it by staring at a screen instead. Now, what all of this wonder, what all of this character creation, remember that is kind of leading us towards this idea of dependence, not just rules. We rob the easy everywhere world of its power, not primarily by the rules we enforce, but by the dependence on one another we cultivate. So this relationship and dependence is where you really get it. And this quote from Amy Crouch I love: when you hate the skin you're in, don't gloss over it. Share in person. So she talks about growing up in the Instagram world and the idea of sharing who you are online. And her wisdom was that instead of hating the skin that you're in and then glossing over it or putting a filter on it, is to actually just share who you are in person with the people around you. And there's no riskier time to do that than when you're a teenager, because some people can make fun of you mercilessly and endlessly for that. But you're also given the opportunity to be a real person. When the TechWise family becomes about dependence over rules, it that's how you form relationships. And that's good news for fathers who are also failures, which is all of us, because the ultimate goal is relationship. But I know some of us out there need a single practical starting point. So the easiest way to start reclaiming the architecture of your home doesn't require conquering screen addiction overnight. It requires small, deliberate choices that form a person over time. That single practice: no devices in the bedroom. Just start there. That way you have the first waking moments of your day, and they have the opportunity to have a spark of something creative that the screen is going to try and flatten every single time. We don't have to be the distracted dad. We don't have to be the men hiding behind the screens. We don't have to be a man without a name in our own home. Courage means embracing the failures ahead and showing up anyways. If you want to read this, if you want to dive in more, right beneath this is a whole article written out, searchable, easily scannable with good quotes from both books that'll help you dive in a little bit deeper everywhere. Amy Crouch ends with this little phrase that I've kind of picked up on and I really like. She says, eyes wider, screens further. That's the direction that I take. And I think that's the real direction of faithful fatherhood. Eyes wider, screens further. That's the direction of faithful fatherhood. Thank you. My name is Jacob Pennell, and I'll see you next week.